Hi, I'm Paul Roberts, and this is Conscious Counseling 101. And I got asked a question that I've never been asked before, and I love it when this happens. I get asked the question, how did I come by, or where did I get the concept of I can't know anything? And the strangest place this question came from was from my own family. And I love it when my family asks something of me, because if they really want to know, then they'll listen. And I love to be listened to because I feel like I have something to say and I want to communicate and I want to be there with those people and give everything that I have. So I'm going to answer that question. I've already answered it for my father on the phone, but I'm going to answer it again in a little more detail, and so that anybody else that wants to join in can. Brothers, wives, friends, family, people from the internet, anybody that wants to learn what you're going to learn, it really is just where I got it from and what I do and why I'm doing it. But there's a lot of people that can benefit from the idea of not knowing anything, because when you abandon certainty, what you do is you end up analyzing more. You end up thinking it more. You can come back to where you originally were if you want to. You could go on a long journey and come back to where you originally were and realize you had everything. But then you'll be more confident. Even if you end up where you started, you'll be more confident that you know what you knew. And if you want to feel that way and you know you've analyzed, you want to feel that you know, you want to call it knowing, okay. I call it faith, I call it not knowing. Even though I think what I believe is probable and likely, I still call it not knowing. So I've made some notes for myself here to make sure I go over the things of where I got this from. The oddest place. It just occurred to me. I'd never been asked it before. My dad asked me, and I think he said my brother was wondering, they were talking about this. I'd asked them to talk together. Where did I come up with the idea I can't know anything? The oddest place. And I had never thought about it before. Right away when my dad asked me that, I started thinking, what was it? How did it come by? Life experience, right in our own family, mostly from my father, the spiritual leader of the family. But in order to understand how it came about, I'll go back to my childhood. When I was a child, I came to the Lord freely and willingly, without question. I stood up in the pre-Methodist church that my father and mother asked me to, twice on Sunday night service. Might have been the same service, could have been several different services. The first time I stood up, I said, I love Jesus. And I was so convicted, and everyone said, amen. And I said, oh, I'm right on. I knew I loved Jesus. Everything I'd heard and seen and welcomed by the church made me feel like, if this is Jesus' place, well, how wonderful is this? I love Jesus. How could I not love Jesus? And all the things that he did for me and how my life would be affected by those things, I didn't even know then. I just thought, this place is Jesus' house. These loving people nurture me. I love Jesus. I love to be nurtured. I love to be loved. I love to be cared for. Natural, right? I was certain that I loved that feeling, and I loved that it was Jesus that was making that feeling. Another time, I was certain, I stood up, and I know I was just barely able to stand. I think I was standing on the pew, not the floor, because I was small. And everybody took turns around the sanctuary, saying what they might want to say. And I know that I felt the sense of hands and arms around me, holding me up, and I know that I could stand, but I was standing on the pew. That's how young I was, very young, more than a toddler, but old enough to speak well enough. And I said, they were talking about hell, and they talked about burglary. We had a burglary in our house at that time. And I said, oh, I know what I would do if a burglar broke in and accosted us and I was able to speak. I would say to that burglar, don't you understand that if you live like this, you'll go to hell? And when you're in hell, no one will even give you a glass of water if you ask. Surely just abandon what you're doing. I didn't speak like this, but I said these things basically. And come to Jesus, and you won't have to have those ramifications. I said this when I was a child. I was certain of it. I knew that I had the answers to all things, and I could barely talk. I knew. So not only was I confident that those were in that church were Jesus' people, and Jesus was there, and it was his house, and I loved Jesus, I was also confident of the negative ramifications that would happen if we didn't serve, and we didn't love, and we weren't a part of following him. I got the doctrine down, all absorbed in, before I even knew what any of life's problems were, as a child. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Jesus says, let the children come to him. Don't stop the children from coming to him. Okay, so I did at once freely offer myself. But as life went on, and I became aware of life's circumstances and what would happen in life, I became challenged. Now, later I found when I got married that, and we did marital counseling and I raised my children and things, I found that the man was supposed to be the spiritual leader of the family. Now, I don't know if this was supposed to be just the Jewish people, the brothers. This was one of the top 5 things I don't know. How do we relate to the Jewish people? We know that the law goes on, and we know that no stroke will be taken away or added to, but what's our place in there as Gentiles, as non-chosen people? What's our place? That's one of the top 5 things I don't know, and I'm still trying to learn those things. And of course, I say I don't know anything, but that's one of the top 5 things I don't even really have an answer to, even if it's a faith-based answer. I do my best, and I let God handle the rest while he's working with me, and I'm trying to find out the answer to that. But all right, so back to that. Jesus showed me in his word. I had a wife that was very, very concerned that I not go down the road where I confine her to being in a small place like the woman's less, Make a long story short, this video is not about that. It's about why was my laser beam directed inward towards just Jesus' teachings? Because everything that came after in the New Testament had that man is on top, man's in charge, and everything that before had that. But everything in Jesus' teachings didn't. He did mention different roles and coming together, leaving the mother and father and going with the wife and having a leadership role as a spiritual guider in the family for the man. It did mention that in a different role, but the roles for the woman were good. They were just slightly different, but I didn't see any negatives, and my wife didn't either. So I focused on those things. Now, this is taking longer than I wanted. I'm sorry. I know you don't want to listen to long videos, guys. I know you do. And it wasn't my intention to do it this way, even though I was going to cover everything, but I'm going to try to get back on it. All right, back to the childhood. So I knew, I was certain then, okay? Through my life, I went to Sunday school. We moved to Florida, and then we moved to Sarasota. We went to Southside Baptist. When we were in Florida, my dad accompanied me on some things like Royal Ambassadors, which is the equivalent of the Boy Scouts, but in church. And we did some camping trips. My dad was there with me close. My dad went and did some things with me. We went sailing. We learned to sail. He took me and showed me a model that he had made of a boat in college and showed me how it sailed in a small pond. And we played a lot of catch. And he did a Bible study one time when we were in Gatlinburg, and we went there into the creek and sat. And I think it was one of the things that he did that made me realize, oh my gosh, you mean to tell me that church can be right here on this rock in the middle of the creek with a Bible and my mom and dad? I thought it had to be the church that you brought me up in. So that was a concept very much like that artistic one I always share about how my dad painted this red bookshelf in my room that was all wood. And I was playing on my bed, and I looked up, and when he told me to look up, and the whole thing was painted except for my name was not painted, left negative space. And it taught me a spark of creativity. Well, the same thing my father did as a spiritual guider was in the middle of the creek. I think it was Cars, and I think it was also in that Cars Motel, and also in the Jungle Brook. And I thought to myself, this is church out here with a Bible in the middle of the creek with water. We were sitting in the middle of the creek with water running by on all sides, studying the Bible and talking about this. So the inkling that I had for creativity and searching came early from my dad, and the inkling of the church is something other than what man makes it came early from my dad. But I spent a lot of time later in my adulthood, after I became married, with my grandmother, Grandmother Roberts. She went to a Christian church, and she helped me renovate my house, painting doors. I talked to her a lot while we were doing these things. And she even helped me move bricks around and redo the driveway. Oh my gosh, so much energy. My grandmother was so tough. One time I was riding with her on my back of my bicycle, I popped the wheelie, we went backwards, I landed on top of her, and she got up like nothing happened. One time she was playing football, and she went running, we let her catch and throw, and we were on the driveway because we didn't have any park to go to, it was big enough. She fell over sideways on the ground and got back up like it was nothing. She'd work out in the garden, and she was so tough, and she'd make these wonderful salads. She had this big garden at the first house, the lake house, then she had a small garden, and she'd work out there and she'd produce salads, and we'd have them with Hidden Ranch salad dressing that she made from a mix, and it was the best salad you ever had because everything was fresh right out of the garden. And I was so looked up to my grandmother because my grandfather died early. She was so saddened when we moved to Florida. She would cry, cry, cry. And my grandfather died a little while after that. And then when I was getting married, I'm getting off topic again, I'm sorry. It made me realize how close I was to my grandmother because I saw her when she would vacuum at the lake house. She would sing hymns. He lives, he lives, he lives within my heart. While she was vacuuming the stairwell, I asked for my grandmother to give me her desk so I could remember where I used to play, where she would sing, and my desk is right over there, and that's where I played as a child, and I still have the bottle underneath it with the plant. This reminds me of these things. My grandmother was a strong Christian woman. She judged me harshly when I got married at my reception dinner. She said I shouldn't drink wine. She said my brothers will see me and others will see me, and I might be okay, because I would argue, well, there's nothing in the Bible that says you can't drink wine. She said, well, but other people fall, and you need to be aware that other people will fall, and they won't be as strong as you, and they won't be guided by the Lord like you, and they'll fall. And then if they see you doing it, then you're being a negative example, especially like your brothers, for instance. You need to set a good example of your brothers. Well, I made her a deal. I said, look, tonight in your honor, at the reception dinner, I won't drink. But tomorrow I'm my own man, and when the Bible says we leave, and we congregate with our wife, and we leave our mother and father, and I have to make my own decisions at that point. So then I drank at the rehearsal dinner a glass of wine with my dinner, not the rehearsal dinner, the wedding reception. And this is how I came to from being a boy to being a man. But we want to get back to why I say I don't know. Very important. And I'm bringing my father into this. And I've already talked to him about this, so I know he's okay with it. And he's told me straight out, I'm not this way anymore. But you see, you don't understand. I'm observing as a child. I took and ran towards God. I ran towards Jesus, like I said in the beginning of this video. I also ran towards whatever leadership you gave me. Like I said, with the creativity. Like I said, with the church in the middle of the stream. But then I had my brothers who I loved dearly. We didn't say I love you in our family. My mother was very strong and domineering and manipulative in some ways. She's not that way anymore because I think she's seen now that we've grown into fine young people, we've raised fine young families, and she's tapered back from that. I don't think she thinks that she needs to influence our direction anymore, but she did it for a while. I'm sure in her heart and her mind she thought she was doing the right thing, but it was not desired. And sometimes I even felt she was resentful towards me because when I first got out of college, I was making a lot of money, and I wasn't a nurse or a caregiver or a policeman or something like that, or a doctor, and I shouldn't be making those things. She should be. She was still working at the time. We shouldn't be comparing one another like that. But I didn't go to my mother for spiritual advice because I didn't think she was founded in the things that I saw in the Bible. And so I was still thinking of my father, but then I was very concerned about him, and I want to go back to my childhood for a minute and show where I lost this grace that my father would give. He was very standoffish, and this is why I talked to my grandmother working on painting the walls with me and the doorways. And I would talk to her, and she would talk to me about my father, and she would talk to me about things like that. And she would say that my father became very standoffish and very quiet and sedentary, not like my uncle at all, even though he still is very religiously like my uncle. And what would happen to him, he had, was it scarlet fever? I can't remember what it was. He had some kind of a fever, some kind of an illness that he was out of school for quite a while. Could have been a year or more. Can't remember all the details. I'll have to ask him about that again. And he said, this changed him. This changed him. I have a video of them at the farm. When they were younger. I can't remember. I don't know whether this was after it or before it, but you could see right off the bat, and just in the ways of the videos of the kids when they were young, you could see my Uncle Leonard had a propensity to be a totally different person than my dad anyway. So, but the standoffishness, the reason I bring the standoffishness of my dad in, that my grandmother talked to me about, is that's the way he was as a spiritual advisor. He gave crucial things, but only crucial things that I picked up on and that I made big. He also did dramatically horrible things. And John, I know you don't like to talk about this, but I have to because I believe God placed these things in our lives for all of us to learn and grow from. And my dad's grown past this all. We don't need to hold this against him, but we need to know. We need to know. How did I get to where I am? I have an image looking down from my car seat onto the ground on the asphalt of a Bible laying on the ground when my father jumped out of the car and my mom went searching for him and tried to find him and did. Right around the front street of the Parkway Heights Pre-Methodist Church in Detroit. And I was saddened because I go back to this time I was at the church. You don't throw the Bible on the ground. Your father doesn't throw the Bible on the ground. What's going on? Came down one time. They were having a fight. I won't go into the details. We've gone into them before, and John gets upset when I say them. Mom and Dad, big fight. And then the kitchen one with the dishes. You've heard it before, so this is for you. This is the person that brought me to this church. This is a spiritual guider. Taught me about creativity. Taught me the church could be outside the church. Taught me to run with my arms open towards Jesus. Okay. Didn't think any more about it for a while. Okay. Got more into my brothers, my love for my brothers, and my fun time that I had with them. John was younger, so I didn't have much identity with him. David had a little bit more first on, but then he kind of got a little crazy with skateboarding and some friends. And when he did that, he went off in his junior high school and high school years and did more with them when he got more freedom. So I didn't see him as much. But right about that time, John came along. And John was at the age where he wasn't like that running off. And John and I pulled out a drum. David had a drum. And he was going to learn snare drum. And we played with it one day. And we said, whoa, we can keep the beat. Some people can't. So we started going around with our little Sony Walkmans and listening to our radio stations while we drive on our bikes over to the beach and go swimming and walk and then ride back. And one day we were going by Folks Music and we saw a drum set in there. I said, hey, John, remember all the fun we had with David's snare drum that he's got at home? Why don't we just get some of this other stuff, these other drums, and have a whole set and learn how to drum? So I was very close, and I was so thrilled that I had a chance to get to know my younger brother because I never did. He was always just a little one we made fun of and we gave troubles to and stuff. Harmless stuff, but stuff that probably you get irritated by, and what can you do? This is sibling stuff that happens. But when David went off and he was on his own more, John and I developed a relationship. It was during that time that John and I would sit down, and sometimes David, but mostly John, and we'd sit down and watch Three's Company. And my dad had designed a split-level house. We had a garage, main level, den and bedrooms for the boys, loft for my dad and bedroom for me. And Dad would sit in a loft at his drawing table, and he would sit there and he would listen. Whenever we were watching Three's Company, which I loved because I loved to laugh, and I loved to have my brother sitting there with me. He would drink a Coke, and I'd have chocolate chip cookies and milk, and then later he'd have chocolate chip cookies and milk. And it was such a simple simple times. Happy just to be there sitting with him and have something to do and laugh at. But Three's Company, as we know, was about a man living with two girls. And in order to do that in that judgmental society that he was in at the time, he had to pretend he was gay in order to fool the landlord, because the landlord wouldn't allow it otherwise. Well, my dad listens to all the shows that we're listening to, and most of the time just listens to them, doesn't care, probably thinking about his own things, okay? But every time that with the idea of how he had to pretend that he was gay or something came up, and the landlord was looking to look at him closer, I'd start to cringe. I'd start to go, oh no, Dad's going to hear this. And sure enough, every time, almost all the times, he'd go, guys, what are you listening to down there? Why don't you go do something constructive? You don't need me to listen to that kind of stuff. Okay, so this is how I start to see my father now. He's worried we're going to fall into a life of sin if we indoctrinate ourselves into the things we see in the boob tube, homosexuality and different things like this. He doesn't really look into it closely. He just hears things that sound bites. Something must be wrong. This isn't right. They shouldn't be listening to that. Even if they're having a good time, they want to be together and they're laughing and they're drinking Coke and milk and chocolate chip cookies. That's all the closer he got. He was standoffish. Like I said, the things that he did for me, I had to help him do by his example. So just let that be. He let us watch. He didn't restrict us. He wasn't all controlling, which is great. I thought, even though he would suggest, go do something constructive. Guys, you don't need to be listening to that stuff. What are they talking about? He let us still have the freedom. We were spanked as children. One time I walked down the street in Gatlinburg and I said to my father, I was a very, very young child. I don't think my brothers even existed yet. I was down the other times for the Bible studies, I believe, that I told you about in the creek. And I said, Dad, why do you have to hit us and spank us and stuff? Well, isn't there another way? And he said, nope, I have to show you what you need to, you have to be on track, blah, 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 blah. And somebody behind me commented because he heard me talking. There was no way for me to talk to my father, but I had counseled with him as a young child whenever I found him in turmoil with my mother. in very difficult situations, like a couple of times that I've mentioned. There really were only about 3 or 4 hostile times, and the rest of them were arguments about divorce and things like that. And I would counsel with them then. They weren't hostile. It was by the time I got to Florida, I think they felt they had enough stuff in line that they could handle whatever pressures were on them. And there was more talk about divorce rather than hostility, because I guess, well, you know, they bought a house, they have the dream, they're working towards the dream life, they're sailing, they're buying a pool, they had kids. They don't want to put in a negative example. They probably thought I was so young that I wouldn't understand or know any of these things. My other brothers didn't see them; they weren't even born for some of these things. But they would just talk about divorce, and I would go and talk and counsel them, and I'd tell them how important some of the things that I'm still learning in church were, and that they needed to emulate those things and be aware those things are important things, and they can work through everything. In some ways, I've been counseling all my life. But the reason we went to Three's Company, whenever we weren't watching the television, which was a lot, we didn't watch a lot. I watched Three's Company. It was a half an hour. And after swim practice, you know, you'd just barely be able to make it if you got home. I think swim practice was quit at 7 and we were home. I'd always done my homework ahead of time. And by 8:30, maybe 9 o'clock, Three's Company came on. And then we had to go to bed after that. But whenever we weren't watching Three's Company, my dad would watch on the television, and it was the television that was down below. He would watch all the evangelists, listen to them, and they would be on there. And I didn't really understand why. I mean, we went to church. I sat in Sunday school by myself in the youth Sunday school, and in the church and listened to the preacher. And then I saw these people on here. Saw all these crazy people. Crazy people. I mean, even then I knew they were crazy. I'd like to look at them and laugh. Some of them were so crazy. But this is the man that I was talking about earlier in this video that helps me to come running towards the Lord, come running towards Jesus. And now he's watching these crazy people. Okay, I don't think much of it. Don't think much of it. Years go on, and we finish watching Three's Company. We'd still watch the reruns sometimes, but then my brother and I would sit and watch Fall Guy. Okay, I was really into the Fall Guy because I was into the $6 Million Man way back before I think the kids were even into it all that much, because they were a lot younger at that time. And here's the same guy. He's got another hit show. Great. Well, I'll share this with my brother. And we had a great time watching that show. Same thing, having a Coke. I never drank Coke that much, but my brother did. And then we'd have some chocolate chip cookies and milk. And we'd sit there and watch Fall Guy. And this would be after we'd drum or do things, go to the beach. We'd have daily activities, playing by the pool. We had a lot of time playing by the pool, playing out in the woods, Cowboys and Indians when we were in middle school, and then later making movies and things when I got into video and stuff like that. And we'd have activities we'd make just to be creative, just to do things. Sometimes we'd just play by the pool and not be creative. But we'd have a certain set of rules that we'd play with, swimming with rules, so we'd play tag and things like that. But it was just non-constructive. But it was activity. Okay, great activity, right? So let's get to these reasons why I don't know, okay? So again, I mentioned my dad was a standoffish. Now, we're moving on. We're past the point where he's talking to us about Three's Company, because now we're watching the Fall Guy. There's nothing wrong in the Fall Guy, okay? But he's still watching these. Years and years and years have gone by now watching these. And I went on to college, was home less and less and less and less. Then I start my life. He's still listening to these things. And like I mentioned before earlier in the video, when I got together with my wife and we were directed towards Jesus' teachings to guide us in the way we construct ourselves, we were supposed to guide one another in the Gospels and show what Jesus' teachings would guide for us. And we needed to learn context. I spent a long time learning context, reading the entire Bible several times, trying to find out, well, what's Jesus talking about, and looking at those chosen people and examining their life and the law, and then looking at the New Testament beyond the Gospels and these people that were with Jesus all their life, and how I believe that some of the stumbling blocks of the early church, yeah, well, I could go that way. Early church, where Jesus said, I'm going to build my rock on you, Peter. And the disciples, as they went, and Jesus was gone from them, but the Holy Spirit was given, they started to develop the guidelines of the early church. And then eventually it turned into the church that I was growing up, standing on the pew saying, I love Jesus. This is what's going to happen to you, Mr. Burglar, if you don't understand. You're going to go to hell and you're not going to get water. This is the church that I see. The loving people that welcome me into it. But now the church was also on my living room TV. It didn't make a dichotomy at the time. I was like, okay, well, we're watching things about a gay guy living with two girls, making us laugh. And my dad's not very pleased, but he lets it happen. He's watching about evangelists. Now, let's go off into our lives nowadays, okay? Sad, sad day when I left John, my brother, when I had to go to college. Even though I came back on breaks, we did a lot of things. Christmas breaks, summer breaks. Sometimes even came up to college a couple times. We did things. And then I was so glad to move back. Brought a motorcycle back there. We played with the motorcycle. Tried to resurrect some of the times earlier. But then they were into other things, and they were going to start their families and stuff. And, you know, as much as I wanted to be together, even with my other brother, they had girlfriends and different things like this, and it never could be like that again. You know, the wives replaced the mom and dad. The children replaced the brothers. Well, they never replaced them, but that's where your energies go. Well, I've gotten to a point in my life now where one of my sons has finally gone to college, and I've just got a lot more time on my hands. I'm renovating a house, but I've done that so many times and I'm so used to it. I started reaching out again. Didn't know how to reach out. I'm not a phone person. We're living in a day and age of phones, which are computers. They have video capabilities. And then we also are living in an age of Facebook. And nobody uses letters, telephones to call. We're separated by distance. What do you do? What do you do when you get to that point? You go and you look at what they're writing, and what they're saying, and what they're into. And you say, well, let's see what I can find that we can talk about. That's what you do when you're me. And what are they talking about? Things that I think are less than probably the best we could talk about. Political things, separation type things, things that offer criticisms and arguments without any solutions. But even though they do think they're offering the solutions, just do it this way and you'll be okay. Just do this. You're doing it wrong. All right, we're getting to why I don't know. All right, school as a child, I did that. Learn how to think. Oh yeah, when I was at school, very important to realize this, guys, just you guys. School only taught me how to think, and that I needed to think. Didn't teach me what to think. Oh my gosh, not at all. Our school is so free. As a matter of fact, I often talk about why I called myself Artsy when I had to think of a name for an email or for a screen name. Artsy1, A-R-T-S-E-E, numeral 1, because I see what art is. But I also see what art is not. Art is not artsy-fartsy, spelled A-R-T-S-Y, artsy-fartsy. About the only thing I learned in college was that, how to think and how to see. The people I was surrounded with, particularly in my college, were artsy-fartsy, and they didn't offer anything. No, nothing. In fact, I was so longing for a regular girl that when a girl from my own town came that was pretty and had her own mind, it was a normal person like me, that's one of the reasons why we got together. Because there was nothing at school for me. Nothing. So we got together. Why? Because I was normal, she was normal. We saw. We saw differently, but we saw. So school didn't teach me what to think at all. I was glad to leave. I wanted to get out of there. I wanted to get back to my family. I wanted to get back to my happy life that I left behind now that I've had my art education. But I had to wait a little while because my wife was there. She had to finish up. We had to get a career started, and we had to save $6,000 so that we could go down there and have a little bit of money while we're trying to get our resumes sent out, things like that. And that took another year or two. So you got 4 years for me, 2 years for her, 1 year for saving the $6,000. Come up with 7 years. Anxious to come back, have some fun with my family again. They all think I've been changed, and I have, but I haven't been loaded down with anything. Oh no. I've only been given the tools to think and analyze. That's it. So now we talk about what we talked about in the earlier part of the video. Some of that analyzation only starts with my wife and I first. That's the business at hand. We're going to get married. By the time we get home, we're going to get married. We got to go to premarital counseling. Well, we had some things to work out. And we spent 10 more years before we had our first child. 10 more years. Why? Because we had to work out what God had planned for us before we did such a commitment of bringing a soul into this world. If we couldn't do what we needed to for that soul, oh my gosh, it would be our fault that we brought a seed into the world and didn't put it on good soil. We waited 10 years for that reason. My mom and dad were giving up on us. But why did we realize it was so important? Well, it was mostly me, I think. My wife didn't want to be dominated, but because the book that we had, that our pastor had given to us was sexist, needlessly, teaching things that Jesus didn't teach. So we got past those things through learning to think. Now, about the time that I was starting to see I was going to have problems with my wife into our marriage about where she came from religiously and where I came from and where we would meet, we got to the point of 10 years ago, but I said, look, I can only have children with you if you at least show me that the graph of our spirituality is going up in the right direction. So we had children before we had even settled it. Even at 10 years, we hadn't settled it. But show me that the graph's going in the right direction. I'll trust Jesus to do the rest. So I did. So we had children. First child we had was Max. He was our first attempt. That was it. We never even tried. It was it. Okay, so we sat there and we said at the Roaring Fork Motor Nature Trail, there's one cabin you come to first where the guy was a pessimist and he anchored his log cabins into the ground and made everything way stronger than it ever needed to be and no storm would ever knock it down. And then the next one you get to is a painted house with clapboard siding, and this guy was a little bit more optimistic. Oh, we're not going to be abused. We're going to be fine, and we'll rebuild if we have to. And these are stories we're reading on the literature they give you. We're sitting on that porch of that house. I pointed it out to John and Mickey, I think. Pointed out to my kids. Pointed out, I think, to my mom and dad. That's the porch we sat on. And we compared these two people's points of view, and we decided, I want to be like the second one. I want to have a little faith in God, something outside myself. Let's have children. Okay? That's 10 years in our marriage. I went on faith, not knowing. The first guy was unknowing. The first guy was, oh, I'm going to be ready for anything. We went on that track right then, after 10 years, of the faith track, not the knowing. Now, why did I feel comfortable with that? I'm not sure why my wife did, but I'm sure why I did. And now we get to the unknowing. This is what I said to my father the other day when he first asked me this. First thing that jumped into my mind, and never jumped into my mind before, of why I don't know, but it did just at, I'd say, 5-second hesitation, maybe 10 tops, and it came to me. That's why I'm sharing this video today. Because all those people that my father has been so confident in and sure of and certain of showed clearly through time and God's divine desire for us to see that they were nothing but wolves in sheep's clothing. So the man that had brought me to the church, the man that had showed me the church can be outside, the man that sparked my creativity, which led me to a creative school to help me to think, the man that did all these things, emulated how he would judge and point down to us that what we were watching would be bad for us, but what he was watching by the word of the Lord was shown, and through time, in actual life circumstances, shown to be truly bad. And it was proposing to be good. My dad said, oh, I'm not like that anymore. I'd say, that's great, Dad. But what have I been saying to you all this time, Dad? What has your son been saying to you that Jesus has taught him and you've helped him to see? Don't put your faith in man. Don't call any man Father, Jesus says. And realize the church is much more than what you think it is, or you're told what to think and where to look and how to be and what to do and what sin is and where you categorize yourself and how you should relate to God. Jesus gave us those things through his words, his deeds, his actions, his sacrifice, and the Holy Spirit that came afterward. Why do I not know? Because I saw immediate running towards something without question, which I showed I was capable of doing, would have yielded if I kept that route going the whole time. I would have become like you. I would have always been certain, just like you are today. We had the argument just a few weeks ago. Once again, we've had this so many times. You don't know, Dad. You have faith. You believe. I said, when Jesus talks about knowing, he says, you'll know me if you keep my commandments. You'll know who I am. Yeah, we do those and we know him. But we do not know he existed. We believe he existed. And there's documented evidence that he existed. We do not know he's the Son of God. We do not know he died, went to heaven, and came back. We don't know any of these things. We believe that he did. We trust that he did. We operate as if he did. We hope that he did. We trust that we will see that he did. But we don't know that he did. This is why there's faith. So when all those wolves in sheep's clothing were shown through time and life experience and the love of money and greed and power and the distortion and the abomination of God's word to gain favor around men and of men, just like those standing in the courtyards with the long prayer shawls, praying loudly, with whitewashed, they're nothing but like whitewashed tombs with dead men's bones inside, only doing what they do for the accolades of men, and for the money and the power and the privilege, just like these TV evangelists were, and they were shown to be what they are. If my father, who gave good example in spite of his badness, could help me to be who I was and grow and learn to think and analyze and raise a family, to be strong and solid, and see even through his negative example, the blessed event that God put there for me to learn from, then he's not only forgiven, he's not only grown past it, he's not only allowed me to have the tools I need to grow from it, but he must also then think, well, what have I also learned? I've learned that the danger was you knew. You were certain. What did you do? You abandoned faith. I haven't abandoned faith. My faith is incredibly strong. My church participation and prayerly state is incredibly strong. Many in our family don't think that it is. They judge me. Wrong. My life's all about that. The faith, the not knowing, the more it increases, the more I know I have to have fear of the Lord. The more I know I have to believe and follow and seek and learn and find by that pursuit the thinking, the analytics, the observance of mankind, the observance of those who propose to be Christians, the observance of the formalized church, all possess the tools we need to be shown what Jesus was talking about when he said, don't put your faith in man. Call no man father. Don't have love of money and things of that nature and desire, greed, and power, so that those types of things will be elevated, so that we don't recognize someone that's in sheep's clothing, that's a wolf. Don't be these ways. The words are right there. Why are they not pronounced loudly enough for us by those that are in those establishments? Twofold. One, they don't realize it, and that's one of the reasons why they operate the establishment the way they do. And two, if they changed or altered it, the establishment would start to fall. In the way that it is designed, at least, it would start to fall. You can't take the church away. Nothing can hurt the church. Nothing can hurt the man. Nothing can hurt the soul. Nothing can hurt who we are as believers. Nothing can hurt us. They may take our lives, but they cannot take what we have. They cannot take Christ inside of us. They cannot take our body. They cannot do anything. They can take our body. They cannot take the use of our body. They can take our life, but they can't take us as servants. They can't alter what we see. They can't alter the light that we see through consciousness and the living word. They can't alternate what God has bestowed upon us through Jesus' teachings. They can't alter who that's made us become. But that's still only based on belief. And when I say these things, and why I'm so enthusiastic to say them to my brother after all this time, is because I know I've been remiss while I was learning and growing, learning these things. I remember my grandmother's lesson about being there for them. Well, I can't be there and remove a speck from my brother's eye until I've removed the plank from my own. I've spent decades trying to remove the plank from my own. And John, if I come on like I know and I have come on like gangbusters and I rub you the wrong way, understand it's because I'm trying to make up for lost time. There may have been times I did things not as well as I could have, and I may still be doing them not as well as I can right now. But I understand that I'm trying not to do that. I understand that I want to remove the plank from my eye. I understand that I don't want you to be feeling ever judged. I understand that I am not to come and try to operate on your eye until I've done everything that I'm talking about in my own life too. I understand those things. So the perception that you have of that I know everything and that I'm arrogant is incorrect. I know I don't. I'm operating as a failed and weak vessel at what I've got. I've had to become my own spiritual guidance because I couldn't gain it from the church or my father or those close. But I also say, don't listen to what I'm saying. Go and see if the word says this. I don't want you to follow me. And it's not Paul's way, the highway. And it's like, I think you said to one of my cousins recently, if you don't listen to it and believe it like Paul, then you come on, drop all that. That's ridiculous. Now, let's talk about a few things that I left out, and then I'll try to end this up, because this was about unknowing, and I think I've established why I don't know, but why that's increased my faith tremendously, and it's guided my whole life. Eagerness to share what I see now, after all this time. We have our own families now. You've raised fine children. You've led your own life. I'm eager to help you to see what I think might be limiting you if you fall by the influence of another that's called man, because of the need for the formalized church, because of the people's need to be feeling like they're together. There are good, godly people at the church. I've been there. You're there. There's a lot of broken people. A lot of people at the church are there because they want to have assurance on a regular basis. They don't see the assurance that Jesus gives by his word and by you following and coming to know him as strongly as I would like them to see it. That's one of the reasons why I become eager, and maybe I'm overbearing. One of the reasons why I'm overbearing more in my own family, John, is because I think you can handle it. You know it's me. You know I'm the person you grew up with. You know I'm the person that loves you. You know that I wouldn't try to mislead you or devalue you. So if I become, in your perception, as overbearing or arrogant, it's because I know I'm talking to you. I think I'll be forgiven and given benefit of the doubt. So I think what that's done is it given me a freedom that's bit me in the butt. You think that now I'm less, my credibility to talk to you is less because of that. And I keep saying, well, how many ways can I work my way around so I become something different to you so that I'm what you need to be? All I want to do is be whatever I need to be, because I know I have something good to say, and I want to help and guide and be there for you and help you learn from my lessons, help you learn from your lessons. I can't help you with everything. This is a lot that I've gained from my father, even in his bad example. Because you know what? If you look at the Sermon on the Mount and all those who would persecute us and would not be like what God would have them be, what Jesus tell you? He told you you're going to gain from those things in blessedness, but learnedness. When we fall and we get up and we're persecuted, we're stronger. When Jesus had to answer to the 3 temptations in the desert, he knew the words in his heart. He answered. And when he did, he became stronger. When we were in Taekwondo, we just wanted to learn how to be martial artists. We got irritated when the teacher told us to teach. But he said, we teach because that helps us to understand why what it is we think we know works. And when we analyze what it is, instead of just doing it, we become more aware of why it works because we try to demonstrate it. In 4th grade, we were trying to tell, we were given an assignment together as a class, try to help me get my jacket on. And pretend I'm an alien from another country and I know nothing. Use your words as clear as you can. This is 4th grade, way before art school. Use your words as clear as you can to get me to get my jacket on. It took 10 minutes. my to get them to get the jacket on. My daughter came home about a year ago. Oh, not a year. I'd say a year ago. And she said, we were asked to write a paragraph on how to make a peanut butter jelly sandwich. And all the things were read in front of the class. And only mine, he said, worked. I think I like to attribute that to my daughter's intuitiveness and ability to think, and she's a good writer too. But I hope a little bit of me rubbed off, because the teaching is so important, because you learn when you're teaching. When I come forward like I know something, I don't. But I'm growing in what I think I might know or learn while I'm teaching. And counseling is very much like that. When I help somebody, I do it in a generic way. Currently, I'm not accepting any fees, because I haven't gotten past the thing of Jesus says, let the children that want to come without restriction. If they ask for a glass of water, don't refuse them. Right now, my way of approaching people with teaching and counseling is through Jesus's words and guidance. And so as long as I associate with that, I cannot charge, because if anybody would not come that would have otherwise, I would have held them back. And so this is one of the reasons why I do what I do, because I'm teaching, I'm learning by teaching. So when I teach somebody, I take and borrow lessons I've learned from my own life's example. Sometimes even right now, somebody I'm counseling right now about anxiety, I'm using the anxiety that I have every day about our political freedoms and what's going to happen to our democracy and things like that. I'm telling him how to become less anxious without using meds, by analyzing and seeing there are greater things than what he thinks he's concerned with. So I'm doing those kinds of things. I'm saying the same things I would want to say to myself in order to make my thoughts come out loud so that he could hear them. And in the way of doing that, I'm learning from him. So John, when I'm saying something to you, I know it, or I already think it, or I already believe it, but I got to hear myself say it. I say it enthusiastically. Maybe with a smile, or what you think might be a smirk. What's a smirk? I don't know. Because when it's coming out of me, and I listen to it back, I hear it when it's coming out, I listen to it back, I'm teaching. But understand, I'm teaching myself. I'm wondering whether what I'm standing on is truly my yes being yes and my no being no. Is it truly equatable to the gospel and what Jesus' words are? Many times you've said, I don't believe as you do. I don't know where you got that stuff from. Okay, maybe you're saying that because I'm coming off stronger than I should, because of what I'm explaining here and why I'm coming off this way in the first place, because I'm still learning and growing and teaching. I'm not. So just understand and trust. Like I say, why can't I do this to you in a stronger way than I would to someone else? Why? Because you're my brother, you're my father, my family. I could do this because you love me. You know where I came from. You know who I am. Okay? So I felt confident, more confident than I should have maybe in those times of talking with you and making videos. And that confidence portrayed as an arrogance or condescending, it's not. It's not. I'm sorry if you think that. It's not. And if you want to help guide me to be a better spokesperson, better communicator, better counselor, better person, whatever, I welcome your thoughts. I welcome your rebuke. What I don't welcome is, it's hard to explain. If you look back, I've got at least 10 years worth of emails. Look back, what's being said has anger, resentment, derogatory language, no teaching, no, oh, did you think you're right? Well, what about this verse or whatever, very little of that. So it troubles me. And when this thing about not knowing and this fervor that's going on right now, I think one of the persons that helped a lot with Judge Jeanine, if you look at the Virginia thing and that stuff, she was actually saying it in a little bit different way than it really was. Right now she's suspended. I heard it from her, because I do also watch the news that I know you watch, because I don't want to be a hypocrite and say, oh, don't watch that. I watch it all. I don't watch it as religiously, but I do watch it. And when I heard it was right I guess right at that time, I saw David's post when I came over there. I said, I want to be more with my brothers. I have more time on my hands now. My son's at school. I don't have to do as many things. I don't have to do as much commuting. All kinds of stuff. I don't have to make as much money because I don't have to spend much money on gas. I have time. I'm counseling people. I'm learning things. I want to share more. And they weren't talking about their kids that much or what they were doing in life. They were talking about politics. How if we vote for a certain person, we're going to get a better life, and things are going to be better. And look at how bad these people are. They're leading you astray. Well, same thing I said about school. I didn't go to school to learn anything as far as what they put in me. I went to school and I didn't know what I was going for, but I'm telling you what I got. I only got shown how to think and analyze and be creative. They didn't fill me up with anything. I didn't bring anything away. Other than that, history ideas class. I sometimes talk about that in my videos. History of ideas. That was a good one. That did give us some, but that was really, again, ability to think. Yeah, I touched on history of ideas. Yeah, touched on actual things. Now let's finish up. Oh yeah, so one of the reasons why I'm so eager is what I've seen to be true that you don't even need faith for. I'm eager to share it. I'm eager to share it because I get to a point where it is something you can see. It is almost something that you can know, like the fall from the grace of the evangelists and the sheep's in wolf's clothing. When you get to a point where you're solid like that, it took decades to get there, then you share it, you're eager. Why? Because you don't want to have people you love succumbing to the same things. Those things are solid. So when I talk of those things, I'm anxious to do it. So when I talked about, all I had was the abortion thing. That's a tough one, man. What do we do? I mean, Abraham was asked to sacrifice his own son. He's already living. Judge Janine said that the doctrine, that the law said you can say up or no like a Roman gladiator once the baby's born. I don't think that's what it really was, but that's what she was saying. Of course, she comes off really strong. And then I saw David's post, and I said, Dave, come on, we don't want to abort children. Of course, we care about the sanctity of life. But when you are on one political side, and I vote mostly left, even though I do sometimes vote conservatively, you make it look like I'm one of the enemies, like it's a Civil War thing. This can't be productive. And so when my brother came to me and he said, I read your comments and I read them again, and I'm going to pray for you that you reconsider. I'm not considering anything bad. I don't want the stuff. I don't want the stuff. But see, the side I'm on allows for more freedoms, and that can be bad because the freedoms can allow people to do things bad. But on the other side, you have more freedoms for wealth and power and corruption that can be seen only by them because they're behind the walls doing these things. There's more loopholes they can get around, especially if it's undercover. And these things are making huge corporations and billionaires that are starting more and more and more to govern how our lives are. So we know that the extreme on the right side is that the huge non-government intervention extremes that greed can produce through power and wealth, causing our world to be formed in the way it is. And then the other extremes, we went and saw Gloria Allred talk one day, and I gave a big long lecture to my family. I said, look, when you go all the way to the extreme on the left, this is what you get. They go all the way from where they passed where everything was good, and they went all the way over there where now it's not good anymore. I know these things, guys. I'm just trying to relate to these brothers. You bring up a topic like abortion. If it was that key, Jesus would have come straight on down. Of course, they didn't have abortion then. They didn't have quantum physics. They didn't. I think my dad said, I never thought of this, but he said, Jesus probably didn't know what was going on the other side of the world. All right, good. I like to think that he wasn't 100% confident because, if we're supposed to follow his example, when he was there and he was tempted, I like to think he didn't know. What did he have to draw upon? Not himself, but the word of God. He said to the devil, this is what the scripture says. And he said that we're not to live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from God. So I like to think that he actually showed he was a human and actually used the word of God to show that he didn't know, but he came and said, but I know the word of God, and this is what the word of God says. So I like to think if we were to emulate him, he had to not know. He had to use the word of God to show what he believed and what he stood for. That's what I'm doing. I don't know what we're supposed to do with children or how we're supposed to legislate other people that are godless already and on the broad road. I don't know what we're supposed to do to them. But I do know that there's a lot of people that would have me restricted to not have freedom, even if I'm on the narrow road. I don't know that I want to live in a world like that, where it's like Logan's Run or something, or we have microchips in us, and if we do the wrong thing or we don't like it, or we speak badly about, Putin just made a law today, you can't speak bad about him, and Trump would love to do that. And, I said something bad about Trump in one of my videos. They just disconnected my microchip. I can't buy anything at the store for a month. Oh, shoot, man. What am I going to do? Well, when I look at Revelations, Joe, this is another thing I want to talk about. And John, this makes a connection to me that was way before your grandmother. When I was on the swim team, you were just a little tyke. I think this was before you were even on the swim team. Back when Rick was a diving coach. I think he was a diving coach. Yeah, I think he was. I think Rick was. Rick was one of the swim coaches. Rick went to one of his church services one time. He was one of the church services where you raise your hands and you speak in tongues and things like that. But that was later in my knowing of him. But at the boys' club, he would gather a few people together in one of the rooms. I think it was the library at the time. And we would sit down. I was very young. Like I say, this was just starting swimming at Sarasota. This was way back when Dave Belcher and Rick were some of the people there. And I don't think you guys were even in swimming. That's how young I was. I'm talking 12, 13 years old. We'd go in there into the library. He'd sit us down. We'd read Revelation. And we'd talk about the end days and the future days. I'd go home and I'd lay on my bed in that bedroom that I had with all the posters, all the movie stars and stuff, and all my ribbons and stuff, and the carpet that Mom and Dad put up the wall. And I'd lay on my bed and I'd go, is this the way things are going to be later in life? Will my brother be against my brother? Will my wonderful family I have really be subject to these difficult times? That would be so sad. But why is this being revealed to me if it isn't going to be the case? And I would sit there on my bed in junior high school, barely out of 6th grade, I guess it was, and think these things. And here we are, 2019. I'm making a video to my brother, wanting so badly to not be against my brother, wanting so badly to reach out, not have it be that way. This was 35 plus years ago. I was 12 years old thinking these thoughts. See, guys, I may have come across strong, but I'm not arrogant. I'm troubled, heavy-hearted, trying to serve, committed. Still that boy that was in the church that stood up and said what he knew, but now I realize I don't know. Standing firmer on faith, the guidance of Jesus' teachings.